why Germany collapsed in both world wars, from blitzkrieg to overstretch. When the First World War began in 1914, Germany quickly found itself trapped in a two-front war. To the west it faced France and Britain, and to the east it faced Russia. The German High Command had hoped to defeat France quickly before turning east, but the plan stalled and the war dragged on into a long, grinding struggle. By 1917, Russia was collapsing from the inside. Its army had broken down due to poor morale, supply shortages, and the growing unrest that would lead to the Bolshevik Revolution. When the new Soviet government signed the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk in March 1918, Russia pulled out of the war. Germany had technically won in the east, but it never tried to occupy the whole of Russia. The country was too vast, its infrastructure too weak, and Germany itself was already stretched thin. Instead, Berlin settled for taking control of Poland, Ukraine, and the Baltic lands, hoping to secure resources while focusing on the more important Western Front. The problem was that Germany was running out of strength. The war effort relied on massive offensives such as Verdun in 1916 and the Spring Offensive in 1918. But these burned through manpower and supplies at a rate the country could not sustain. Austria-Hungary was weak and forced Germany to keep sending troops eastward, draining its resources even further. By the fall of 1918, the German army was still organized, but desertions were rising, morale was collapsing, and revolution was breaking out at home. The soldiers were retreating in order, not running in panic, but the state itself could no longer continue the fight. 2 decades later, Germany made many of the same mistakes in the Second World War. Once again, it faced a two-front war, this time against the Soviet Union in the east and Britain and the United States in the west. The pattern repeated. Germany was tactically resilient, but strategically overstretched. In 1944 and 1945, the army tried desperate last stands, such as the Battle of the Bulge, but the forces were exhausted and the war effort collapsed in a way that echoed 1918. One of the most striking contrasts between the two wars can be seen in how armies collapsed. In 1918, the Germans fell back gradually, with order still intact. By contrast, the French army in 1940 disintegrated within weeks. When German forces launched their blitzkrieg through the Ardennes, the French were caught completely off guard. They had assumed the forest was impassable to tanks and concentrated their defenses in Belgium. The German attacks smashed through weak points, communications broke down, refugees clogged the roads, and many French units fled in disorder, abandoning their equipment. The difference between Germany in 1918 and France in 1940 shows how collapse can take different forms. One is a slow loss of will and resources, the other a sudden rout. The key to the German victory in 1940 was blitzkrieg. This new method of war emphasized speed, surprise, and the close cooperation of tanks, aircraft, infantry, and artillery. Panzer divisions spearheaded the attacks. Motorized infantry followed to hold ground. The Luftwaffe provided constant air support, and engineers cleared the way. Crucially, junior officers were given freedom to act on their own initiative, allowing the German army to exploit opportunities as they appeared. In France, this method achieved overwhelming success. But when Hitler turned east against the Soviet Union in 1941, the limits of blitzkrieg were exposed. At first, the Germans won stunning victories and captured huge numbers of prisoners. Yet the distances were enormous. The supply lines stretched over hundreds of kilometers, and the Soviet state absorbed the blows and regrouped. Factories were moved east beyond German reach, new armies were raised, and the Red Army adopted a defense in depth that slowed German advances. Mud, rivers, forests, and the brutal Russian winter further wore down the invaders. Blitzkrieg could destroy armies, but it could not topple an entire continent-sized nation. Looking back at both wars, a clear pattern emerges. Germany's central position in Europe left it vulnerable to multiple enemies at once. Its leaders believed in decisive blows, but underestimated the grind of attrition and the resilience of their opponents. In 1918, Germany lost gradually despite keeping its army intact. In 1940, France collapsed almost overnight. Blitzkrieg was brilliant against smaller industrial nations, but it failed in Russia, where size and resources mattered more than speed. In both wars, Germany's strength on the battlefield could not make up for its strategic overreach.